3, 2, 1. Hey, I'm live. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hey, everyone. Thanks for checking out my weekly live stream. This is the 46th week of me doing these Saturday at 9 p.m. PST streams. Been the entire time working on my web desktop, so been working on it for like over 300 days now in my evenings and my weekends. Mostly even on my weekends, it's been the evenings because I have a family, so they don't really give me too much free time other than, I mean, it's enjoyable time with them. But if I'm working on my side project, just a couple hours in the evenings it's enough. I just enjoy playing with it, kind of like some people like drawing or painting or that kind of thing. I've found that it's just a relaxing hobby for me, so it's something I've enjoyed, and I decided to share it with these streams. And yeah, like I said, this is my 46th one. Working on a web desktop. If you want to leave a comment or throw a chat message if you're watching it live, then feel free. Always up to hear some comments, criticisms, concerns, anything like that. And if you like my videos, you like this video, you like me, whatever kind of liking in my direction you want to do, you can do it in the form of pressing the like button. And if you want to motivate me, you want to keep track of my videos, if you just want to press the subscribe button, please feel free to press my subscribe button. Like I said, it motivates me, helps me going, so helps me keep going. And here's another thing that keeps me going is the frosted, what is this? Frosted Berry Red Bull edition, the winter edition. So now we're officially in the winter once we got the winter Red Bulls, I guess. And yeah, without further ado, let's jump into this desktop I keep talking about. Web desktop. The term I've decided to use for it. It's not a term I made up, but for a while I've been calling it an OS. I still do occasionally just for fun, but one day it really doesn't have the ability to be a full OS ever, but it's still something fun. So got my thing here saying this bitrate audio issue again. Well, I'm gonna ignore it once again, but maybe I'll have to mess with my streaming software in the future. Presumably people can hear me. I remember my last video had audio, so I don't know why YouTube's telling me my audio bitrate is 0, so I'll ignore it. Here's my web desktop. We got context menus. We got, so many things. I need to make a list, honestly. I just keep adding to it. This week we're going to add a lot of effects, a lot of tweaks, a lot of little things like that, and also the terminal. That's the big one that we're going to do this week that we discussed last week at the start of the episode. This week we're going to do it. Yeah, at one point I'm hoping that this will just do everything almost that Windows does, minus what apps it can support and what apps it has, obviously. But if you want to do something with it, especially file system related, it's hopefully going to be able to be up to some kind of task. It's not going to be about performance or anything. It's just about being a replica, and just doing all the different features and having fun with it that way. That's where it's been fun for me. So yeah, without further ado, let's start coding. So this week's going to be a little tricky because I have a ton of commits. I ended up just doing a bunch of little tweak commits where I would just, I don't know why I did so many commits, honestly, just too many, where I just, so many little modifications, I guess that was it. There was a lot of tweaking this week where it was like, I thought it was right and then I changed. I was adding a lot of features to the terminal too. What I'm thinking we'll do when we get to the terminal step is we're actually just going to take it straight from the code. Actually, I was thinking of doing that anyways, to be honest, this week. We used to do this in the previous episodes, and then I switched to doing the commits. But usually I only have like 30 or 40. I don't know why I did so many this week. So maybe this week what we'll do is we'll just go through the files that I changed in my redo branch that I play around with. And we'll just kind of apply the changes as we see them, I think we'll try to do that. So let's do it. So this is the first file, the Babel file. The reason I changed this file was because I'm trying to prepare for Next.js 12 having a different compiler where I think it's called SWC versus the Babel one that it's using currently. Currently with this Babel file, I can't use their new version 12 compiler. And I was just trying to remove customizations, but I realized this one's kind of irrelevant to remove because if I can't get rid of all of them, who cares? So I'm still kind of waiting on the styled components one. I am aware that in one of the Next.js Canary versions, they say they've got support for it, but I tried it and it actually was still giving me trouble, so I'm just going to avoid it for now. But maybe I'll work on that upgrade later. As far as the ESLint file, I think we'll keep we won't shrink it here, sorry, and that we'll keep it open. But we're going to come back to it a few times. It looks like I disabled a couple rules that were finally annoying me too much. We'll probably get to removing those in a little bit. But let's not get hung up on that, and let's just keep moving on. We'll keep that open, though, so we remember we need to do some changes there. So I did some tweaks to the browser. I think we can just apply most of them at once here. Let me search for the word browser, because I think I might have done it in a few places, unfortunately. No, that's the browser. Oh yeah, there's a bunch here. This is why I got away from doing it outside commits. You know, maybe we'll just stick to the commits. I mean, hey, there's double this time, but I think a lot of them are useless. There's some that I did around boxed wine where I'm playing with being able to use this tool called boxed wine. And I ended up adding a lot of stuff and then removing it. There's also a lot of upgrades here that aren't relevant. But I think it's probably better if we stick to the commits because, man, I'm getting spammers every time. I got a spammer in my live chat again. I don't know why they just keep happening lately. I guess I've hit enough popularity. Maybe, I guess in a good news, bad news scenario, I'm at over 500 subscribers finally, which is kind of cool. That's a little milestone. But maybe that's where I started getting these spammers. I don't know why. It's kind of weird. So I reported it, and then I can just remove it here, I guess. But yeah, it's just kind of weird that that keeps happening. I'm not a fan of that. And it's just useless messages. Is there even a link in this? What was that about? Yeah, these .xyz links. They're just useless. Oh well, but they distract from streamers. That's the one annoying thing about them. Without further ado, let's go to the commits then. So yeah, but the terminal's a tricky one. See, the terminal's a whole new app, so I think I'm comfortable. Let's just start with the terminal. How about we do that? Got a message here from Abrar22. Add project Grand Autotown. Okay, let's take a peek at it. Hi again, Abrar. I appreciate you coming in weekly with some interesting requests here. Project Grand Autotown. Oh, okay, it's almost like it's like a Grand Theft Auto, like a Flash game or something. Is this Flash? What is this? I guess just HTML5, but it's pretty cool anyways. Okay, tell you what, I'll add it to my next my stream notes here. Now remember, these take time to add. I know you've given me a few other requests that I haven't completely got to yet, but I am keeping track of these. They're on the wall. Like Diablo, like I can't remember. I think there was another one you suggested. Add the game Grand Autotown. Okay, I'll take a peek at that. Sure. I don't want to become a game portal at the same time necessarily. I would like to be able to add the ability for people to add them. So I'm gonna look into it and see if I can make it easier for other people to add as well. I think that would be having expandability would be a nice thing in the future for that. So yeah, like I said, let's just get to the terminal right away. I'm just going to search for the word terminal, and I think that should be. So yeah, we can see here in the search bar that this is a good chunk of the first part of the terminal. We got a little peek of it here in the directory level, where I added the directory listing for it. And then the source files. But yeah, and then the shortcut. Okay, yeah, so this one's pretty standalone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the entire terminal file the way that I've completed it, and we'll get to see this terminal app kind of come to life. So the terminal, before we go any further with it, actually, let me explain what source I'm using. It's this thing called Ffmpeg Js. It's similar to like the Xterm for like Unix systems, I think. Terminal emulator for the X Windows system. So there actually is like a type of terminal that's used in operating systems, and there happens to be a JavaScript version. I don't think it's from the same people. I'm not sure. But it's very well done. This is it here, but you have a lot of control over it. I'm actually not even done it yet. So this is like terminal version 1, but we're still missing some key things. Like I literally can't go left or right. There's no history. There's no autocomplete. That being said, I've added a lot. But the cursor manipulation and all that stuff is a little tricky, actually. You have to do these little characters for everything. Like you can't just say go left, go right. You kind of have to work with it, but you can see here it's been used in a lot of different things. Like it's used here in Visual Studio Code, so it's basically what we're using here. Like this terminal down here is basically also using Xterm JS because this is an Electron app, this VS Code, which is made of JavaScript as well. So we're going to be using the same thing as that editor. And in the future, I'm going to, with the Monaco editor that I have here that's using the VS Code backend for the text part, I am going to add a console. This console is going to be a component that I can also put in another app like the Monaco app. So we'll be able to have a console that's Xterm JS and a text editor part that's Monaco. So it'll be very inspired by VS Code in that way. But we also want to use it outside of the Monaco, and that's why we want to also make it an app. And let's start. Let's start with the most basic part, which is the styled, or well, I mean, there is no basic part. Let's just, okay, well, the basic part is a folder. Let's start by making a folder, apps. So in the apps folder, we're just going to make a file called terminal. And in there, we're going to make our index file. And in this case, and in many other cases, it's one of these component apps that I've made. Another example being, let's see, which is another example, the video player. Yeah, you see here this container component. So we use the container component all the time now. It's handy. We're going to use it again. Here it is right here. So the index file, very basic, is just that container component that I've made in previous streams. And it takes a hook, and it takes a styled component, and it takes an ID that it's given from the process. And with that, it can like kind of it can take a library that says, hey, give me a container. And it can take the window that I make, and it kind of puts the two together. So you get a window around that container, and then within the hook, you can put all the logic. And the styled component is where you can put some of the styling, or all of it if you want. This pattern has worked pretty good for me with a lot of the apps. Not all of them. I mean, the apps in which I use a library, and that library says, hey, give me an element, give me a container. Those are the apps that are most suitable to this approach. Next piece, let's do the styled component piece, because that's pretty simple. So this is called styled terminal. That's a pretty common naming structure that I do for them. Styled terminal.ts. And we'll just paste in the code for that. So we're using styled components. It's a div, 100% height and width. Simple. That's all I need for that. That being said, this is another feature that's missing currently, is the ability to adjust on the fly. I don't have that currently for the terminal, because it's a little trickier because the terminal is based on rows and columns, whereas the window size is based on pixels. So I need to do a little bit of logic as the resizing is happening to add rows and columns depending on where it's resizing, and also a little bit of buffer in between because so there's no part where something's getting cut off, which is actually how Windows command prompt does it too, kind of at the bottom of the window. So we've added this piece. Next piece, I think what we can add too is this xterm. I think I added something to the package file. Yeah, there it was. Whoops, I flew past it. Right, in the dev dependencies, I did add xterm as a dev dependency because I'm using it for some of the type scripting, but it's a dev dependency. I'm not using npm to get the library. I still do it through my little program files paradigm that I'll show you in a moment. Let's say yarn add xterm -- dev, because we want it just as a dev dependency, also powered by water. So we got that one in there. If we refresh 4.15.0, same as last time, so nothing's changed there. Good to see. What's next on our list here? Let's go back to just the word term. So we were up, oh, where'd the little scroll bar go here? There we go. We were up here. We just did the styled terminal as well. Next up is the config. I think we can just do this config next. Just as it's almost like code, but at the same time, it's just configuration. So we'll go into terminal. We'll call this one config.ts. This is another similar name pattern that I follow often, is having a config.ts file. So in this case, for the config file, so these are xterm configuration options. They come from, as you see here, now that I've imported xterm as a dev dependency, I can do import type and actually get the types that I need. So I made an iTerminal options import, and this is the actual xterm types. So this is like their API as well, kind of, as to what options I can set. And you can see here all the options. So I've set some. So it's a transparent one. It's doing 70 columns, 20 rows. We have cursor blank. It's an underlined cursor style with an 8 pixel width. This is the font styling that I used with 14 size, 100 weight to try to make it as thin as possible with a 0.5 letter spacing. And then from the theme, I've got the background color coming from the process directory terminals background, and the foreground color, the text, is coming from this definition here because I don't need it. I didn't need it in the theme or anywhere else, so it's just defined here. But these are all just my configuration options that I based on from what xterm has given me as options. people could pick different stuff. This, if you don't do these, it doesn't look like this by default. But this to me looked closer to the command prompt, which is kind of what the Windows command prompt is the one I'm basing it on. I also added a few little helpers here, like backspace is this backslash B space backslash B. This is again where I'm telling you the X term's a little weird. So just to support backspace, you need to add these like 6 characters. Is it 1, 2, 5 characters? So it's kind of odd, but that's just the way it is. And this is another pattern I have where I have a little libs array that has the files I need from program files. So when you open the app, that's when it loads these and requests these files. And then also I've made this little prompt character, just like with the command prompt, how like you'll see that, and then it'll be like this, and then you type your command in here kind of thing. So this little character here, it's different in different places. I've decided to go with the one that's like the command prompt, which is that arrow symbol. That's that piece. Let's move on to the process directory so that it's not complaining about this anymore. We just did this one. Take a look at that process directory here. Where'd it go? Oh, it's hidden. Wow, I reference it a lot. Maybe we'll just do wait, where is process directory then? I was hoping to find it listed in at the top of the file. I think I blew past it. Terminal, okay. Oh, right, it's process/directory. Oh, that's on me. Sloppy there. I think the terminal is all we added. I did a few singletons here for, I think, what is it, like x80, yeah, v86, and for the JS DOS, I've switched those to singletons because they don't really work properly when you run 2 of them. We'll get to that later, so I won't minimize this folder. But I am just going to take the terminal piece here for now. And we'll put that into the process directory alphabetically, wherever it's supposed to go. Elemental PQRS terminal. Here we go. This is the same pattern, just pointing at that index file that I have. Like I said, for now, we're not going to do resizing until I figure out the rows and cols thing perfectly. This is that background color that we're also referencing in the config here. Default size. This is the exact size that works perfectly with that 70 cols and 20 rows. In the future, hopefully I can make this more dynamic. This is the icon we'll copy over in a second. I took it from Xterm because this is based on Xterm. And I call it terminal. Simple name for it. Nothing fancy there. So next up, let's go back to the top here with the terminal stuff. So we did those ones. I've got a few custom types here. I think we'll skip this for a moment. Let's not. Let's just get these types in here so we know about them. Another pattern I do is having these types files. Sometimes you need custom types. So you see here, I did get the terminal type from Xterm, and I'm saying that window.terminal can be a type of that terminal, so that when we load the files, that this gets that it knows this exists. I've also added this onKey event. I'm not sure what we need that for yet. We'll get back to that. And then here's the command interpreter. This is the piece that I made that gives some functionality to the Xterm. So you can as you type the command, that's what I'm calling the command, the thing you've typed that you haven't yet pressed enter to. So it gives you access to the command. It gives you access to the current directory. It's called CD. Complete command is that autocomplete feature that I'm still kind of working on. I have a very dumb version of autocomplete that we'll get to today, but it's not ideal. Process command is to tell it to look at the command string and try to make that into a command, like when you press enter. Set command is something you do on type to update the command, and if you press backspace, it removes a character. And then welcome is just a welcome message. It'll be like the first 2 lines when you open the command prompt, and you can also call that command from some command. I can't recall which one. So that's it for types that I've added. I made my own command interpreter. Now let's look at the command interpreter because I'm pretty well. Actually, no. Let's look at that one second. Before we get to the interpreting of the commands, let's see how the commands are allowed to exist, because this is kind of a big file. Most of this is just like different commands. Usually I don't like making files this big, but this is a tricky one for these command interpreters where I didn't find a nice way to be able to break it up just yet. And I'm still kind of, it's going to be refactored a few times, you know. It'll get the refactor treatment once or twice or thrice perhaps, if we're lucky. So let's just get to the hook first, the main use terminal hook. and take a peek at what's going on there. So there's the use terminal hook. It's complaining because we don't have the command interpreter yet. But let's start looking through this file and seeing what's the what here. So this is a typical hook for these the container component. They all have the same structure where it's like ID, URL, the component or the element, sorry, the DOM container element, setting whether the loading state is true or false, and also looking at what the current loading state is. Those are the 5 things that get passed into these hooks from a container component. And I've made use of all of these in the past. It looks like I make use of them here too. So before we look at some of these things, can we minimize some of these? Let's shrink it down and then we can expand it. That's the way I like to look at the code. So there it looks much more manageable. If you see here the imports, we don't have to worry about those. Those are just like, you need imports. I need to name something. Hey, and this file is the thing that I need. But other than that, these imports are completely worth ignoring. Doesn't matter what's here. There could be 1,000 of them. It's just what you needed to make this stuff work, to be able to reference it. So we'll ignore those. Here's the hook. And then within a typical React hook, you're going to have these declarations where you do things like use state, use callback, use whatever, use your custom hooks to get variables. And then you can also do some effects here. And you can return stuff too. In this case, the use terminal hook and container component hooks typically don't return anything. But what they do typically do is they do something with this container reference. They put something there. They say, hey, xterm library, here's that container you need. Put a terminal in there. So let's take a peek at how we do that. So the first effect I have here is the initial one where this is based on no dependencies. So when we first load the terminal, it's going to say load files. I'm going to move this mic a little closer actually even, so I can look closer. There we go. Hopefully you guys can still hear me okay. There we go. So yeah, load files, those libs that we talked about, which were the CSS file and the JS file that we'll download those. Those are just the latest ones that you can get right from their GitHub. Or from the NPM, I believe. And then what I do here, this is just a little check to make sure it doesn't run twice. So if window.terminal, wait, oh yeah, no, this is just, wait, what is this? Right, after the load files has occurred, I just confirm that the terminal is now part of the window object, because that's what loading those libraries is supposed to do. So if now there is window.terminal, I set the terminal element here, which is a state of the terminal. I set as a new terminal with the config that I pass in that we've already looked at here. That's the first basic hook. Second hook, oh wait, is this hook before the other one? We can discuss this one quick because it's very simple. This one's just for the key handler, I believe. Current on key, terminal on key, key handler. Right, the trick with the key handler is it's kind of dynamic. Things change based on how the command is. This all might change, to be honest. I'm not completely set on some of this terminal stuff. I'd even looked at a possible option. There was this one package called Local Echo that did a little bit of this, but I lost a lot of features at the same time that I wanted to roll my own kind of thing. Anyways, this key handler, it gets re-rendered a few times because it has a few dependencies. So the idea of the hook here was that anytime this changes, it would just be reapplying the on key handler. So yeah, it would dispose of it here because it's something you can dispose of, and then it would reapply a new key handler to it. Yeah, that's what it was doing. So that's just to keep the key handler. The idea of, like, let's say I type a letter. Now the handler, if I type backspace, it needs to know that what was the logic behind that? There's some reasoning behind why it needed to be that way. It's asynchronous, first of all, so what am I awaiting? Is there any awaiting going on there? The purpose of that being async. That seems a little wrong now. So this says it's async, but I don't see any awaits, so I think I've changed things up a little slightly. Well, that's why we're writing this, to double check it now. This part still makes sense. Well, let's look at the key handler then and see why it couldn't just be done once. It would be ideal if it could. I think the issue's here. Command length. Right. I guess I could have done that within the set command function here. This seems like the kind of... This key handler doesn't need to be regenerated, perhaps. That would be ideal. Or this could be done in the hook now. This is just the key handler whenever the terminal kicks in, we just do this, but we only want to do it once. Well, that should be fine. Yeah, I don't think any of this stuff would change. Paste clipboard. Could that change? It's based on set command. Complete command. Well, that hook could change. That hook's going to change all the time. Okay, so I guess this does change a bunch because it's referencing command and the hooks and stuff. Let's just leave it as is for now. But I think in the future there may be an opportunity to take this key handler and just put it inside this effect and break it down a little bit. As it is, I'm not super happy with it. I actually don't like these spaces either. These seem unnecessary now. I don't know if that's just something that occurred during the pasting. Not a fan of it. Let's keep reviewing this anyways. So we discussed that effect. Let's discuss the other effect before. Well, no, let's just get to the key handler because that's the main piece of this effect. So the key handler is basic enough. It knows about the control key. So if you press Control C, that's like pressing cancel basically in a terminal. So I just have it here, reprint basically the prompt, like saying what directory you're on again. That's the typical behavior for doing Control C that I observed. So it writes on new lines just the prompt again and basically clears whatever the command was. Now if I do Control V, that's considered a paste operation, and then I run this paste clipboard function. And the paste clipboard function is simple enough. It just takes the clipboard text from navigator.clipboard.readText. That's a normal function that's part of the browser. So it says, give me the clipboard text, and then write it to the terminal, and then add it to the new command. Add it to the command. So that's the basic for when you press Control C and Control V in the terminal. And then if you hadn't pressed Control, we check the codes here. If it's Enter, get out of here. If it's Enter, it does processing of the command. If it's Tab, it tries to do that autocomplete. Backspace, it does. If there's no length, then it prints a backspace character to remove. If there is a length, sorry. If there's no length left, then it doesn't go back any further. And then it updates the command and removes the last character here. And like I said, I don't have left arrow, right arrow, or the delete key working yet. I also don't have up and down for history. And my tab autocomplete is a little dumb, I would say, at the moment. And then finally, if it's not enter tab or backspace, then I can, and if it's only a one length key, so basically a letter or something printable. I think there's some better way to do printable here, but I'm okay with this at the moment. It's been working. Basically just print the key and then add it to the command. So it's a pretty simple key handler, really. You know, if it's enter, process it, tab, autocomplete. It needs some improvement. It needs the up and down arrows and the left and right and the delete key. So I'm still getting to that. But I've added enough to the terminal that it does enough where when you see it, I think you're going to be like, okay, it's making some progress. Let's discuss this second hook because it's one of the bigger ones. So we have a terminal. We got it from here, from this hook. We're still loading, and we have a container. Then what we do is we take the container and we say if right click is clicked on it, we're also going to treat that as paste because that's also how the clipboard works. Is that if you right clicks, or no wait, it's actually a two-part thing. So first off, we don't want to show a menu. So we halt the event, we halt showing a right click menu. Then we see if there is any selected text on the terminal already. If there is selected text, then we copy that text. So we write it to our clipboard. And then we clear the selection cursor. But if there is nothing selected, then we do a paste operation, just like we do with Control V. And then after that, it does terminal open, which is the xterm command to say, hey, take this container and turn it into a terminal. We say loading false. We print out that welcome screen from the welcome command. That's part of the command interpreter that we'll get to in a minute. And then we print out the command prompt message to kind of start. And then once that's loaded, we do a focus so that as soon as you open it, you can start typing. And once that's done, if there is a terminal and it's closing, we dispose of it. This is the return function from the use effect, the cleanup function. Now that's everything actually for this piece. So that's that entire thing explained. Now let's get to the command interpreter. .ts, and we'll jump over here. So we just went through all that rigmarole. This is more to explain, this darn command interpreter. But I think it's a little more, it's simple enough once you get it that I'm just like copying commands basically. But it's fun to implement them, you know, you kind of get to think about how each command works in the command prompt. And I still have a bunch to go. I have some on my list here on the board, but I've finished some, as you can see over there. So here's that famous command interpreter we've been talking about. Here was one cool thing I thought for the two top, the welcome message. Where's the welcome message? Here it is. Let's shrink some of these. So the welcome message here, what I did is I actually made it up out of the package.json file plus commit information. So, oh, where is that actually? That's like another neat thing I did that I forgot about. Let me see if I can find that. Oop. Window.commit. Here it is. Oh, so this is directly on the index page. I got this going on here. So this is an addition for me to extract the current commit from my folder via Next.js's get static props. This is my first opportunity to use get static props, actually. And I think that's all I did on this file, so I'm actually just going to directly copy this file change and paste it in place. Oop. We'll go to the index page here and paste the change in, and let's take a peek at this change and make sure that that's all it was. Yeah. So the way Next.js's get static props work is when you build the file, or when you build all your static files, it'll run this in Node the first time just to build it, but it's not going to be something in the browser environment. So it gives me an opportunity to actually look inside my source files, kind of. So as you see here with get static props, what I'm doing with it returns props, these index props here. All it returns is this commit string. And what the commit is, I get the execute asynchronous here, from the child process node command. This allows me the ability to run a command. And then what I do is I run the git rev parse command, the short version of it, on the head. And this gives me the head commit, basically. And I make sure that the current working directory is the directory, the local one. So basically all this does is it gives me the little commit message when, like you see here when we're in my git commits. I'll scroll up a bit so I can show you. So all these little numbers here, this D016759, etc. Whenever I build the files, it's at some point. This commit was the last commit. So that was a way of me getting this very unique version that I can use. So this is something I run at the start, and then I turn the buffer, because this gives me a buffer return data. I turn that into a string, and then I trim it so that I just have that short version of the commit message. And then the way that works with this get static props is then when the page loads, it's one of the props already for you. So now I take the commit prop and I just inject it right into the window for now. I could do something, I guess, in like a context or something, but this seemed okay, and this allows the user to access it too easily via the console. So I thought, why not just dump it in the window in this case? You know, sometimes window can be useful. So that was the one opportunity where I decided to just dump it in the window. Let's get to the command interpreter again. So that's where I'm taking commit here from at the top. So I have the commit message. Oh, another thing is alias, right? That's another piece that I added. Oh, and also it's like a, I don't know if this is news or of interest, but it's also the introduction of me naming my project, renaming my project, at the start of me renaming my project. And the new name that I had decided for the project that I guess I'm just announcing here is Datal OS, kind of like Dataless, but Datal and then OS at the end instead of a US. So I don't know if that's necessarily clever. There's a lot of interesting wordplay with Dataless and operating systems and craftsmanship, and maybe not operating systems, but creations, I guess, let's say. So I thought it was apt enough anyways. So anyways, I've decided, I don't know if this is a real thing, alias. I don't think it is, but nothing's complained at me. No tooling has said, hey, you can't just slip in properties and package. So I made my own thing called Dataless here, and I'm actually going to, called alias, and I'm going to use that here. There was actually somewhere else I used alias now that I think about it. Well, we'll get to that in another commit once we get to it. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Oh, it was here in metadata, actually. Is now a time to add it? No, we'll get to that later. let's just go back to that command interpreter and keep going with that. So that was just for the welcome message. That's the welcome message. It's basically this, the alias or the name, and then the version is going to be the version from the package, and the commit message is, if there is a commit message, it's like -commit, otherwise nothing. And then the second line is by whoever the author of the package is, which happens to be me. And then the license, in this case, is the MIT license and the word license. And license it also gets from package, because that's something here. So try to get as much as I can from dynamic sources so I don't have to hard code stuff. Pretty much just the word version and by are the only things that were hard coded here. So that explains welcome. Clear is pretty strict, explanatory. Xterm has a function called clear. And I think you have to do this write command too to actually clear the line you're on. So clear doesn't clear necessarily. Clear like clears everything except the line that you're on. And then you have to do this wonky command to clear this line. Still figuring out which of those commands to do in which cases. And that is it for those little mini functions. Let's get to the complete command function. So this is the autocomplete. It takes the arguments, splits them into spaces. Why does it do that? Split pop. Oh, because I just want the first one? What the heck's pop doing again? I always forget. Remove the last element from an array and returns it. Oh, okay, right. I want the last thing because it's like you press tab. Okay, give me the last command and I'll try to autocomplete that one. Okay, so last arg. Oh yeah, it's even called last arg. Jeez. I'm reading right to left instead of left to right here. Directory contents. Okay, so yeah. So as we know, there's, well, I don't know if we do know, but one main concept here that I'm keeping with the command interpreter is that it's in a directory, a specific directory. So there's a state here called cd, current directory, and I can set it, and it's based on this home directory. And home is the user public directory. I think I already had this established. Oh, I didn't. Darn it. It's funny, autocomplete knew about it, but it's actually hasn't been added yet to the code here. Home. Right, yeah, I guess I just added that. And I also changed these at the same time. We'll get to those in a bit. Let's just focus on the things that are involving the terminal. So we needed home. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. Oh yeah, so it was supposed to be here. So home is the public folder. That's going to be when you open the terminal, that's the first thing. And that's coming from the command interpreter's defaulting of the state as home. We get some file system commands here. I still have some to come. I don't have all of them established yet. I don't even have a help command yet. But as you'll see, I have enough to just start adding commands, basically, and adding features to it. The terminal itself looks good, you know? When you try to, maybe there's some stuff you type and it's like, oh, I was hoping it could do that. It will, but doesn't yet. But you get the feeling it could based on how it looks, I think. Okay, so yeah, suggested index. Basically all it does, it takes the last argument and tries to find a file that starts with that name. But it does that for every flag. So if you just keep pressing tab, it's just going to keep guessing. And once it fills in something, once it makes a guess, you press tab again, it doesn't try another guess. So there's still a lot of features I hadn't really thought out. I almost don't even want to go into too much detail about this command complete. I'm thinking of getting rid of it, honestly. Maybe I should. You know what? Let's do it. Let's not even do command complete. It's just extra complexity right now because, as I said, I'm not proud of it, unfortunately. I think what we need to do is just yank it. So command complete, no more. And let's just remove any reference to it from our memories. It was here, and I think the only other place was in the terminal I was actually calling it. So we won't take that anymore. And there's no more. So when you press tab, nothing happens now. Because honestly, it was a little subpar. So we don't need to let that subpar stuff slip in for now. And there must, oh, in the types, there was probably in the types one more place. Yes, command complete. So that's not ready for prime time yet. But a lot of it is. So let's get back to the stuff that is. One of them being this command interpreter. But let's see which commands we can do. Ah, so I did need the 1 day in milliseconds. Why is that? Oh, because I've also got an uptime calculator now too. There's so many things I added. That's why we had to do this dump today of it. Elemental P QRSTU right here. Oh, I don't even know the answer to that. Let me figure that out. There we go. You could just do math for this. Oops, I hadn't switched to the code. Here we go. So I could have just done like whatever, like 24 times 60 times 60. But at the same time, I just do that once, calculate it, and then just put the number here to save time of the JavaScript ever having to do it. So, and also then I know what that number is. If I ever just saw that number or even seen 24 times 60 times 60, I'm not going to necessarily know, oh, that's this right away. Also times 1,000 because it's in milliseconds. So it would have been a little tricky. Anyways, what's next in the commands here? So the welcome we discussed. Unknown command just prints, command is not recognized as an internal or external command. Most of this terminology and these wording is from command prompt. I just kind of copied their logic for it. So for process command, here's how the command works. So we take command that's being updated every time you type. We get the base command, which is the first. We're splitting it by spaces. So the first thing is the base command, and then everything else is considered the arguments. There are some command arg processors that I considered using, but at the same time, I decided to just roll my own. And when I run into edge cases, I'm just going to solve them because I don't feel like it should be that complex. And so far, it hasn't been. I turn the command to lowercase so that I can do a switch check on it and just compare. And why do I do it here instead of just doing it here? Because I use this command a few times. Yeah. So let's shrink all these commands so we can just kind of see them in their entirety. Sometimes one thing I liked about using the switch pattern is that sometimes I'll have multiple words for the same thing, because in Linux, you can type it in and do one thing. And in Windows, it's another word for the same thing. So you'll see here once we shrink them all that I'm starting to build up some commands. Yeah. How many I got here? So they're a little weird, some of them. I don't know if they're weird, honestly, though. They're standard. Let's even ignore the switch statement for a moment and just see what's left. So process command runs whatever the command's supposed to do, and then at the end, it just pops up another command prompt. So like, command's finished, and then ready for next command. This is just the command prompt. And if the current directory changes as the command, then it shows the new directory. And then it clears the command. And that's all the command interpreter does. So it doesn't do very much. So if we go to the switch statement here and we look, and we can just kind of go through how all these work. So cat and type is basically just to type out whatever the file is that you put as the second command. So if you type like cat and then the name of a file, it would print that out. One piece I want to probably generalize in the future is this first piece here, where if you're in the directory and you just type without a /, you type a file, I want the command interpreter to assume, okay, he means the current directory. But if you don't find it there, I also want you to assume that command you've been passed is actually a path, and try to look at exactly that path verbatim as the real path. But currently, I'm doing that logic in a few places. I think it's simple logic, but I just don't want to do it in a few places. So here for file, I take the command args and I split it. Why do I do that? Oh, I join them. Sorry. So I make the assumption that. I'm not even sure I'm a fan of that. Why do I do that? Oh, right. And this is another issue where I'm thinking of getting a command parser at some point, because this parsing by just spaces is not necessarily perfect, because we do allow file names that have spaces. So for now, I'm just assuming that you're not doing anything fancy. You're not doing any / argument flags. You're not doing any -- whatevers. That'll come in the future when I have a better command parser. But for now, I'm just trying to lay out some of the commands and kind of get the basics of it. A lot of this wouldn't change. Maybe if anything, it would be less code. Like the only code that matters is this piece here. That's like, try to check if the file exists. If it does exist, check if it's a directory. If it's a directory, say access denied. Otherwise, print out the file. And if it doesn't exist, say it can't find it. And what was this one here? If there's no file, or if for some reason, if there's no file, you just put the word cat with nothing else, then you say this syntax command is incorrect. So this piece here and this piece here, even probably in the future we won't need, and we'll have some generic thing where it's just gonna know it'll have the right information. The full path will always be the full path for the file system commands to do what they need to do. Currently, I'm just doing that. If there's a /, treat it as a path. Otherwise, join it with the current directory to make a path. But yeah. So anyways, that's all that's doing. The read file command is here. CD is change directory. Also dir I've considered as change directory as well. So that's another one. Where is it here? So yeah, this is doing the same kind of logic again, where we join all the arguments and call that the directory. And then we do that starts with logic to decide to get the real full path. I want to avoid that stuff in the future, but for now it's here because it's just a couple one-liners, so I let it slip in, but I already regret it. I need a generalized function here. So one thing I did here, if there's a directory and it's not pwd, the reason I do that is I've decided to reuse this function kind of to do a little bit of what pwd does. My understanding of pwd basically just tells you the current working directory, I think. So the logic here, if you don't put any, if you just put cd and press enter, or chdr and press enter, it'll do the same kind of thing as doing pwd, basically. So I've decided to kind of reuse that function. And the reason I check it here is I don't want you to be able to reuse pwd as a cd command. So you can't do pwd and a directory and have it do, it won't do anything. It'll just ignore that, and it'll just show you the directory. Same if you don't put a directory. But if you do put one, and we got the full path, it kind of does the same logic. Checks if it exists. If it exists and it's not the current directory, then it changes the current directory, sets it here. Otherwise, if it already is the current directory, it just prints a new line. And if it couldn't find the file, then it says system cannot find the path specified. Same as the other one. All these error messages are straight out of the command prompt for the most part. Clear in CLS just does clear, and we've already looked at how the clear command works. Date, simple enough, just says the current date. In command prompt, it lets you set the date. I have no interest in them doing that, so I just print the date. I use the same exact format that command prompt prints it in. The current date is, with this ISO string sliced at the 0 to 10. Gave the same format. dir and ls, that prints out the current directory, so we get new line, read the directory, and then for each directory item, just print it out. Currently, I'm emulating the dir/b, which is like the bear command. I think it's similar for ls. It might not be. Even for ls, it might be not verbose enough. Basically, all I'm doing is just literally printing out the name of the file. So it's the most basic, bare bones directory listing you can get. Echo just prints whatever you type. So echo, and then whatever. I just join the echo command, or the arguments. Exit and quit just closes the app. Task kill is for killing a process. Same with the kill command. So we take the first, so process names can't have spaces. So I just assume the first command argument, that's the process name. And then if that process name is in the processes list, then I say sent termination signal. Actually, maybe it should be, it's kind of disingenuous to say it that way. I should say this and then say that. So I should send the termination signal and then say success, sent termination signal. Yeah, there we go. And if it's not there, then I say the process wasn't found. Simple enough. Again, for license, I print out the license that I already copied, that I have from that constant up above. For PS or task list, I print 2 new lines. So there's that one space line. This was to emulate more so task list than PS, because PS I think has a little bit better listing. This I might change in the future too, this pad end thing. That was my method of adding these columns, but I'm not 100% sure. I mean, this is, you see here 25, 25, 20. These are too many magic numbers. This I need to turn into some basic function where I'm like, print rows. Here's the array of columns. Here's the data. Currently, I don't have that. But again, I will in the future. That's a simple one to write. For now, all it does is, yeah, it prints the PID and then title, prints a HR bar, and then goes through the processes and just prints out each process. So pretty simple, just listing the processes that are currently running. Reboot, restart, shutdown, all does the same thing. Basically the same as when you press the reset on the power button on the start menu. Time will print out the time, again with the same format that I was getting from command prompt. Title will allow you to change the title of the command prompt. Uptime here. Uptime was a cool one. That was a fun one to make. So there's this thing called window.performance. If your browser doesn't support this, it'll just say unknown command. But I think pretty much every browser that supports my app would also support this most likely. I found in the navigation entries within the performance, there's this thing called duration, which is basically how long it took to navigate to the site completely. There's other metrics too, but I found duration to be the longest one. I want whatever the longest one is. So, and there's this other thing in performance called time origin, which is like the original start of the page beginning, basically. So you take the origin plus the duration, that essentially gives you the time it took to boot for your site to fully boot according to the performance metrics. And then from there, I take the current date minus the boot time, and I consider that the uptime in milliseconds. And then the days of uptime, I take the uptime in milliseconds divided by that 1 day in milliseconds that I got, and I floor it to just get the basic, is it a 1, a 2, a 3, no decimal points or nothing. And I also get a display uptime by taking that same uptime in milliseconds, converting it to a date. So that gives me the date from like 1970, January 1st, whatever. But I don't care about most of that because I don't care about the day, the month, the year kind of thing. All I care is about the time. So this might give me, like, let's say this is 6 days worth of milliseconds. I don't care that it's January 7th that this day is representing because I just care what time it shows. So I convert it to ISO string and then I just grab this 11 to 19 characters. That's the time that's formatted already the way that I wanted. And then I print it out. Uptime, days of uptime as days, comma, display uptime. And this was matching kind of something I saw from htop. Printed it out that way, and I liked that command, the way it looked. Ver and version just prints the version. That's the other half of that welcome command. Who am I? I've decided who am I is going to print the navigator user agent. I don't know if it's relevant, but that's my perspective on if the user types who am I, well, who are they? And what do I know about that user? Very little, honestly. So I'll show them their user agent. That's like some kind of thumbprint, but not an ideal one. I don't know if there'd be any other better commands to get. I'm open to ideas there. And then if it's none of those commands, then what do I do? If it's none of those commands, it could still be a program that I want to run. So that's where I have this option here. If there is still a base command, then we see if it matches a process in the process directory. And if it does, then we treat that as an app. And we also try to get the second argument, combining all the spaces, and treat that as the URL. And then we allow it to open an app either with or without a URL. And this code here is a little sloppy. This could be more simplified. The open command happens one way or the other. So we'll just say like that. That's nicer. That turns 5 lines into 1. Why is it complaining about that now? Oh no, that's fine. There we go. So that's simple enough. If there's a file, gets, again with that full path logic, this is the thing I want to avoid in the future. This joining of the command arguments that I got earlier and then deciding, well, what's the full path? Is it relative or not? That shouldn't, I've done that like 3 or 4 times in this list here. And then once I start the app, I add a new line and that's it. And if I don't find the process, then I just also treat it as an unknown command. And if no command is printed, then it just does this at the end. And it does this no matter what. That's the command interpreter. So we've got a lot of it here. Now we need to get a few of the other things that we don't yet have, such as the source files. There's 2 of them here, the CSS file and the JS file. We're going to open these in different tabs and grab them here and grab the raw ones. This isn't minified, but I don't care too much about that. This one is minified. And what was the path that these were in? Program files, xterm.js. What's this button do? Is this like copy path? Okay, maybe it is. Let's go to the code here. Go to program files in our public folder. And we'll make that folder xterm.js. What's it called? I think. I'm just going to drag in those 2 files I downloaded. So those are the same source files. That's the same version that I have in my deb dependencies, that 4.15.1 or whatever it was. Next thing we need is the icons. Here they are. I have a big icon and a small icon. And we also need the shortcut, which is going to be in the start menu. So the start menu is in public users start menu. And we'll make a new file here called terminal.url. I'll paste in what I got here. Simple enough. The app is the base URL and the Comment is just when you hover over it, it'll say it's a command prompt. There's no URL in this case, pre-URL. I guess I could pass in the home path, but I like that if you don't pass in a URL, it opens up that generic home path. So I'm fine with that the shortcut doesn't need to have that. The icons go in public system. What happened here? What's this public? Users public. Oh yeah, there is only a public folder in there. That's okay. System icons. Let me just copy those two icons I have. Wait, where are those two icons? I opened those up. I didn't save them here. So I'll save the 16 by 16 one, and I'm just going to copy that one to the folder. And then I'm doing this slightly in the background, secretly, off screen, like baking cookies secretly. And I'm just going to copy that one. There we go. So we have all the icons now. Let's just look at the changed files here and we can see them. So for the icons, I went with this little icon here for the 16 by 16, and that's the 48 by 48. That black's a little hard to see, unfortunately, but it is what it is. It's the Xterm icon. I wanted to use their icon because it's cool. I think that we just discussed the entire terminal. I'm not sure if we're missing any pieces that are required to get it running. I think what we should do here is try to do an ESLint first. Actually, let's at the same time slip into the code here one more time and just see what other word term is there here. Yeah, that I don't care about this lock file at all. In fact, let's just shrink this. This is a big lock file. Whoa. We should just pre-shrunk this lock file because I do not need to see this. Let me just keep scrolling up until this thing ends. I'm happy to see that long file was a good amount of this scroll bar. There we go. So where is this for terminal? Yeah, we've already done all of that. That's why that's all shrunk down now. Up here, is there another one? Term? Oh yeah, we did that one. We got the dev dependencies. We got the process directory entry. Yeah, we got it all. So if we look at the code here, it actually is quite mad about that. So what happened with the command interpreter here? It seems to think there's a bunch of unsafe calls somewhere. Let's see where that is. 19101. Oh, this is that ESLint thing. Wait, no, is it? No unsafe call. That doesn't sound right. If it's talking about any's, then it's wrong, basically. So it's saying, what is it saying as an any here? The terminal? It doesn't seem to know what the terminal is all about. That's weird. Wonder why that is. Access slice on an any. Where was slice occurring again? Here on this. Wait, get offset ISO string. Oh, that's my that's at least one of my mistakes, is that this function doesn't exist, I guess? Yeah, I don't know if I've imported that function yet, but why the heck didn't it tell me that? Here we go. Yeah, that's weird. Okay, so that's one little function we need. We don't need this one yet. That's something else. Just this little piece here. Where was this supposed to be in functions here? Yeah, I think it's my VS Code, because I switched branches and it used to have this, and I think it thinks there's things that are not here, so my IDE didn't complain. So the one missing piece was this get offset ISO string. And the basic idea here was to get the ISO string the way I wanted, but without a time zone offset, because that was something that was happening. When you do get ISO string, it's offset by the time zone. So I had to correct that so that I could get the correct information. So that's why I call it the get the offset ISO string. Maybe I could even say time zone offset ISO string. I don't need to go. Yeah, maybe I should. Get the time zone offset. Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, but at the same time, it's accurate. Now, there were a few places here where I needed it. That might have been it. Try to run ESLint again here and see if it's a little less stubborn this time. Yeah, I guess at least that's one of the issues, but I'm surprised about, what was the other line, 162? What would that have been about? This here? No. Let's see, maybe it's okay. Maybe it was just that one thing. That'd be great if that were the case. No, there's still one little piece. Line 120 now. What is it? Close with transition. Telling me you don't know about that? Oh, I think that this is also another command that I actually had to make. Right, I had close with transition as a function for the longest time. And I've decided to get rid of that, which is going to mean... It's going to mean others will change. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just change it once here. And then we'll go through all these other ones. As you see here, I had a function called close with transition. And now I'm actually using it in the use process. I do like that approach. But I don't know if I need to get rid of it as a function. Let's see how it's being used within the where I actually started to use it. Yeah, I don't want to change all these other places just yet. But if it can remain a function in the same place, yeah, see here it got moved. It was in functions. Right. It could probably have just stayed where it was. Yeah, I moved it here. What I could do is I could just pass it the way it was being used before. And then I don't need to move it. Actually, yeah, then I don't need to bulk up this file. But we do need to allow it to be exported. So let's go to the process context state. Use process context state. And what do I have in my clipboard here? Right, close with transition. We'll put that here. Was that where I put it in the last time? Yeah. Close processes by URL. That's later on in this episode. Got so many commands here, it's insane. Oh wait, that's when I use close with transition? Oh, okay, I get it here. I get it. So I don't think I need this other command just yet, though. Maybe I do. Let's take a peek back at this here for a sec. Did I use this command in my command interpreter? No, I guess not. So this hasn't been used yet. Okay, good. I want to try to limit this change to just be as basic as possible. So there's a function here called close processes by URL. I'm not sure at what point I use that. I do use it with close with transition. So we are going to make close with transition. No, we still don't need it here. Because what we're going to do is we're going to export it the way that I want. Let's go back to the process handler then. Process context, sorry. What we'll do here is we'll just say that it's based on that. Oh wait, this close with transition needs an ID though, doesn't it? Is that a problem for me? I don't think it is. An ID, that can still be the case if I just do it like this. ID. This needs to be a function just like the other one is. Let's copy it from here. Let's just change them all. It's just easier at this point. So where does this function live? This function lives, I put it below the URL. Let's just do the same. So we're making this close with transition. It's not going to live where it was living before, and we're going to have to change all the instances of close with transition. So yeah, it makes more sense. Like, I had this idea where, it's not even a good idea, but it was like, to close the process, you can get this function called close, and then I almost always want to close with a transition, but for some reason I was taking another function called close with transition, and then taking the close function and putting them together, and then running that. So it's like I was taking two pieces to make one thing happen. It should have just been coming from the process, I think. Process context. So that's what we're going to do here after I have a sip of my Red Bull. Ah, nice. Okay. So we need to import this. The close command is just like this. This is basically what it was like before. We'll go to where the function is. So here's how it was before. It was close and then set timeout. We're going to cut it out of here. Paste it in here for a second to compare. Yeah, just close just like before. It's identical, but now it lives here. That is all that was needed to move it. But now we need to move it in all the other places it was being referenced, which is actually not that many places. So here we don't use it anymore, but we get it from here, and we probably don't even need close anymore then. Yeah, it actually becomes a much cleaner command anyways. That was the first place. Here is where I'm already using it correctly. And now, yeah, now it'll work properly because we had that import already. Here again is another place it was wrong. don't need to pass in close here anymore, and we need to find it. Where did it go? Wow, there's a lot of code there. There we go. That was the close. That's another piece where it's gone. So where are the pieces it's correct here? It's correct there. It's correct here. Anywhere where it's coming in from a hook, but not where it's being imported. So here it was also wrong. Another one I can switch out. And then last. Oh no, this is not a last but least. This is the one that doesn't need to be changed. This is the context. Okay, there was only like 3 places that were unrelated, but they were necessary. Oh, what have I not saved here? Let me just double check that function got removed. Yeah, I added that one, and then there was another functions here where I should have removed it. Yes, it got removed from there. Okay, good. We're going to review these changes in a second, but I just want to run ESLint again and make sure we don't have any other little sneaky changes that I didn't do here. Just looking through here. These all look correct otherwise, so hopefully we don't have any more. At the point where it can do an ESLint without any errors and it can do a build, that's where I'm going to say, okay, we got our terminal working now. Because we're just taking code that I already had written, basically. We still need to keep this open because we need this in a moment. Well, not in a moment, but whenever we get there. We're an hour in. We've almost got the terminal done. That'll be a big one. But boy, do we have a lot of commits to get through. Okay, so ESLint had a ton of problems now. Nice. What's going on here? Process closer? Oh, we don't need that anymore. Process closer was just some silly idea I had when I had that whatever that was called. That's what I called it, a process closer, but it was a silly name for it. Now a bunch of other stuff's complaining here. What's it complaining about? Oh, because I didn't update the dependencies, possibly? Yeah, I made a mistake here again. Close with transition. Yeah, there's probably a couple of those I screwed up. That's where you always got to catch these, but that's the beauty of... This was in the linting stage. This wasn't even a build. We're going to do an ESLint there. Let's start reviewing the changes and just see where we're at. So we added that alias so we could print in the terminal. We got the xterm dependency here. Here was the close. This is just a close with transitions thing we had to do. I'm okay with this change and this change and this change. The config, yeah, nothing to change there. I'm happy with all of those settings for now. ESLint's worked. Try a build now while we're at it and keep looking through these here. The container component, sure, nothing fancy there. The styled component, very simple. Did I press plus? I'm pretty sure I did. There we go. The types, yep, we've decided to get rid of the autocomplete command for now. Wait, that was part of this too, wasn't it? What was this on-key event? We wanted to establish what that was earlier. Ah, yes, that was just when the DOM, that was for the DOM handler here. Because I'm using use callback, I don't get the inferred type from having it directly wherever it needs to be. Wait, where does it need to be? The key handler. Here it is. On key. What is it taking here? Keyboard event. Maybe I should have just done that. React.keyboard event? Is that not true? Property DOM does not exist on keyboard event. Really? And yet it existed here. Oh, DOM event is the keyboard event. Oh, okay. Which is what I did here? Is that what I had for the types? Oh, it is. Okay. So I didn't do myself any favors there. It just needs to be that way. Let me undo that and put my on-key event back. And then let's see, what have I broken now? So it seems to... Oh, right. This was one of the first ESLint rules I was tired of. So what is it complaining about here? The reverse of this is what it's complaining about. When it's like this, is better written in dot notation. So I do prefer dot notation, but it's up to me to figure that out, because if I try to quick fix this, then I get a TypeScript error where it says property terminal comes from an index signature, so it must be accessed with that style. Okay, well then why is autofix complaining? And when I started looking at this rule, I realized I've already done it in a bunch of places. Oh, actually I haven't done it in a bunch of places yet. Good. I think this episode I did it in a few more, but let's not. I'm going to remove it from here and here as well, and we're no longer going to have that rule. So I'm going to remove it from all the places where I had to ignore it, and then we're going to go into ESLint and we're going to say no more with that rule. And we actually already had that note here. That was this dot notation, so It's an okay preference, but it's just getting in the way. And at the same time, I think if you know what you're doing, that one's not such a big deal. Let's try yarn build again here. Once again, close all the files. The ESLint, we added the dot notation ignore. The config, we've gone back to that style. So that was one little tweak I had to add to the config. The types we're okay with now. We just discussed that. The command interpreter, I think we've pretty much discussed all the commands. We haven't looked at them yet, but we're going to get there. I won't put that one on staged yet. Same with the use terminal, I won't put on staged yet, but it's another simple one. Just a few keyboard commands at the moment. This was just the ESLint ignore tweak. That's all this was here too. This looks like a bigger change, but it's just because it adjusted the indenting actually. This was that close with transitions thing. Yeah, that's all that was. There was a few refactors that had to happen. This was removing the close with transition and moving it into processes. This one was, what was this one? Where did it go? Oh yeah, this is the close transition one. Sorry guys, I just got a little spam again from these spammer people in my live chat. It's so annoying. The terminal directory entry, nothing crazy there. And as you can see here, the background is an RGB-A, the A being alpha, being transparency. So it's only 60% opaque. That's where we get that transparent terminal effect that we're going to have. Here's where I moved close transitions into the processes. This was that getting the commit from the git command so that I know what commit version of my static build we're on. These are all the dependencies, the CSS, the JS, the icons. Just add those. Oh, you can't see those right now with my window. Let me make this bigger. There we go. So that's the things there. These pieces here. There's so many files now that my picture goes over top of it. The shortcut is very simple. You need a shortcut in the start menu. Those constants, the home path, and the 1 day in how many milliseconds in a day. Simple one there. What I do in functions, I got my time zone offset string, ISO string. Okay, so before we stage the command interpreter and terminal, I think we are at the point where we can actually run the dev environment and take a look at this new terminal we have. So here we go, without further ado, with all that code. Here's the terminal right here. Actually, let's reset so it alphabetically gets in the right order. Here's the terminal, and we click it, and there we go. So as you can see here, I don't know how well you can see that it's a transparent background. You can see we got my Datal OS version 2.00-3015BE48 by Dustin Brett, MIT license. And as you can see here, we can do ls and get the list of the directories. This is based in the public folder. This is the same folder as here. And you can see if I were to put a file in here, let's say, and I run ls again, there's the file. This is a live listing. dir does the same thing. I can change directories, let's say to the desktop here, and I can do a dir there and see the shortcuts. Can make another, like make a text document here, let's say, and we can see it in the list right there. I can also do the type command to look at some of these files. So you can see there I can do type and get the data printed out for me. What were some of the other commands? There's so many commands here I'd made. Cat and type we went through, change directory we went through. I can show you clear, CLS. There you go, that's what clear does. If I press enter, it does like that. If I do control C, it does this. If I type and then do control C, it clears it. That's similar. We could do date and time here. Date, the current date, time, give us the current time as hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. We also have that uptime command I made. It says uptime is 0 days, 1 minute, and 36 seconds on the page. We can do echo. Let's say echo hello. Do echo hello world. Echo hello world. There we go. We got our kill task. So if we do PS, we can look at the tasks. There's the two tasks right now. So this is the file explorer. Currently it cuts off the name. That's actually how it did it in command prompt. So I copied that, but I hate it at the same time. So it probably won't last for now. So if you see here, we highlight over a piece of it. And if I right click, remember it did the copy. And now if I do Control V, oops. Oh yeah, Chrome is asking to use my clipboard. So I'll say allow. And there we go. And it read my clipboard and pasted it in there. So we'll finish off that piece here. It's public. If I press enter, it's going to say not a recognized command because I only typed just the path. I'm going to copy the path again, and I'm going to add the kill command first, space, control. And now instead of Control V, this time I'll do right click. And if I do right click with no selection, that's the same as paste. So if I right click, there we go, it pasted. And if I press enter, there we go, it killed the process. So we have a little like a process manager handler there. And then if I do PS now, you see that all that's left is the terminal. And I could do exit to exit the terminal. Or what I could do, oh, I resized my window, darn it. Let me unresize it here. Resized my streaming window and gave you guys a little bit of empty space there. Open the terminal again. I'll do PS. And now when I see it there, I can do kill terminal. And that also kills it. So that's kind of cool. You can either exit or you can just have it kill itself, kind of. There's like a suicide command or something. I can do reboot, and that'll do a complete clear of the entire cache and everything. So let's say if I had a file made here, like that file right there, and then I open a terminal and I do a reboot. For me, reboot is like a reset. So there we go, the file's gone now. Same as if you press this button here. This button here just completely nukes it. What other commands? The title, for changing the title of the window. Title, hello world. Changes the title of the window. I don't know why you'd want to do it, but it was one of those commands the command prompt had. Ver, for version. Oh, my version doesn't do what I print the way I expected. Oh, neither does my license, actually. I actually wanted license to be... What did I want from printing license? I think I wanted the word license, and I wanted version to print that. Or maybe to print this. I don't even know. Maybe we'll tweak that. So for version here, let's make it more like how the welcome message is. Where is that darn welcome message? Here we go. Maybe we should just save that as like display version. Let's do that. So this piece here we'll call display version. Display version. Oh wait, it shouldn't be most of this. I actually just want this piece here and this. There we go. That's the display version. Version plus commit. So we'll use the display version here. Now that fits on one line, which is nice. And then for the license too, I think we're gonna have that be like a one-word thing, and we'll call that the display license. Display license. Oop. And we're gonna do it like that because I prefer having that word license in there. And then that will just be here up to the period. So the welcome message adds period in there. Let's refresh our terminal here. And let's try that again. Ver, exactly the same. What happened? What didn't work there? Didn't I just change? Oh no, I didn't change. I didn't use display version. That's step 2 of this this mess. So for ver and version, we use display version. And then for the license command, we use the display license. Close it, open it again. So ver, there we, no, I messed that up somehow. The license is display license. That part was correct. What happened to version? Oh yeah, why didn't anybody tell me? Well, it was obvious once I tested. Third, fourth, 6 times the charm here. Ver, there we go. I like that. That prints out this. And then license. MIT license. Okay, I'm happy with that. What's left for commands? Who am I, as we said, is just the user agent for whatever use that command is to anybody. And then we can also run commands. So we can run... Can we run another terminal? No. That'll be changed in the future. I have a fix for that we'll do. But let's what can we run here? We can run a browser. Browser, enter. Is that not working? I actually thought that part worked. Browser. Maybe that's my little clever tweak that totally didn't work. Let's go back to my command here for running commands. This is here where I shrunk that and made this a little more confusing with this async part, but I don't see why it's causing an issue. What if we just cut this out and we completely ignore the URL? Then are we able to run commands? Because I actually thought that worked. Huh. But it's partially working because if we do browsers with an S, yeah, so browser partially worked there. Maybe there's some kind of upgrade I need to do to open? Huh. Oh. Well, I kind of like this code the way it is. To me, this still makes sense. I'm not quite sure why it's not working. Let's take a look at what PID is here and make sure that it's actually... It must be working, though, because if it didn't, it would have been an unknown command. So there was a PID, and I requested the opening of it here. Let's double check we didn't change something in the open command. Where would that be in? Open equals? Not that one. Open process it would be in. Oh, I did change something about open process. This is for that singleton fix, but this really shouldn't have actually been the fix for running things in the terminal, as far as I can think. Yeah, I think that fixes like a singleton thing. So my opening command is not working. That part's unfortunate, but maybe it's because of create PID. I think that's again part of something else. Well, I'm not sure why this command doesn't work. I guess we're just going to have to add this to the to-do, to the next stream. Every other command we just tested worked, and we did a little bit of tweaking along the way. But this piece here where it's supposed to run the command, it found the PID. Oh, wait. If file. Oh, because there was no file. So this should happen no matter what. That's my mistake. And then this could be a let for full path. Wait, no, I need full path regardless? Not really. What's the solution here? There's probably a solution that's not so silly, but let's just do it this way. Full path, and it equals nothing. And then we'll just change it here depending on if there's a file. I'm a huge not fan of that move, but... I guess what I could do is I could just run it regardless. Like so. Not a costly command. But then here is where I'll check. If there's no full path, if there's a full path and it exists, then use the full path. Otherwise not. There we go. That might be a fix for what was going on. So let's try that again. Browser. There we go. And because there was no path, it tried to open on the home path. And it couldn't. It gave me a 404. That's kind of fun. So I wonder if we could do browser http www.dustinbrett.com. Well, that's not the correct URL, but it's interesting that it did that. It's not what I wanted. Anyways, the browser part worked. Could I have opened a second terminal now? Okay, cool. So I could have opened another terminal, even though I haven't done all the singleton work yet to make that sensible. Okay, so we have a terminal, and all the functions work now, including that one that I half broke earlier, it looked like. So that's a lot of files we just changed here. If we look at the whole list, what is that? That's, I don't know, 25 files it says. I think we've gone through all of them enough. I don't want to beat a dead horse here. I think let us call this terminal part 1, because as we know, we don't have autocomplete, we don't have history, we don't have left-right navigation. We don't have a good chunk of commands still, like delete, remove directory, that kind of thing, make directory. But I'm going to get to those. I've got them on the board. Got a message here from Lightbook. Hi, this is really cool. Thank you. Much appreciated. Yeah, I'm hoping people will like it and be able to play around with it in the future. I'd like to almost have parity with like the base DOS commands, if possible. and work with this file directory stuff and to be able to manipulate the files in the command prompt. I also have a lot of future ideas for the terminal involving other commands that we can get in, like ffmpeg, ImageMagick, git. Was another one. Those are 3 examples of code that there's JavaScript libraries that basically you just load the library and you give it a literal string command, just like you would type in a command prompt, and it gives you the result. And you can link in, you can actually give it files as buffered files. So I already have access to that via my read file command. So I think it would be possible to also have like some real legit programs on here. So someone could just come in and let's say drag an image on, and then if they know ImageMagick, they could run the ImageMagick command and have it do ImageMagick stuff without them ever installing ImageMagick. And once I have ImageMagick and ffmpeg working in that way, I also will have a little bit of an API so that I can use it in my context menus too. So let's say you drag in a picture, and now that I have ImageMagick logic in there, you could right-click the picture, and right away I could have like a little convert menu, and then that could be like convert JPEG to, and then a sub menu of like PNG, WebP, whatever you need to be, resize, that kind of stuff. All the stuff ImageMagick can do, but in some sensible context menus, if I can think of them. Same with video and ffmpeg, or audio as well. Anyways, I still need to add a help command. I need to add a lot of commands. But some of the basic stuff, it really does look like the command prompt. I tried to match the font, the sizing, the spacing, the coloring. The transparency thing is more of a Linux thing. I've tried to merge Linux in here a little bit, but at the same time staying a bit true to the Windows-esque stylings. Okay, it's time to commit it. Terminal, part 1. I'm even going to say here part 1. And I'll say for next stream, let's say terminal part 2 we'll do next stream, where we add more commands. There we go. Cheers to that. Got a "those are cool ideas" from Lightbook. Thank you. Much appreciated. They're literally on the board. I have them on there, so in my mind, they're going to happen, but I don't know when. Some of them are really easy, though. Like, I could give an example. Quick one here. Ffmpeg Js Api. Is this it here? Node. This is for Node. But if I can just find, they're all using the same ffmpeg command for the most part. Yeah, like, no, actually they're not. This one's already made its own API. Well, just out of the blue, I guess I can't find a good demo, unfortunately, but there was one demo I saw where you could just literally verbatim give it a string command, and I think that fits better with how I've already made the terminal, so I'll probably do it that way. Okay, so we've gone through a bunch of files, but oh, what a scatter of commits I have to get through. You know what I think is going to happen this episode, as we're an hour and a half in? We've done the terminal. I'm happy about that. We're going to do more, but I think there's going to be some cutoff point where we just kind of back away, and then I'm going to take this branch and I'm going to integrate it into the next episode, where I'm going to have some more clear commits, and then we can follow the commits again. Because as it is, this just feels like a behemoth of a branch. But I want to get to some stuff, so let's get to some stuff. So we just did terminal. I finally got that committed. I don't know if I want to look at the commits and pick those apart, or because there's some really cool ones, some cool things I wanted to show. But there's just so many changes here I've done. It's insane. That one we can minimize. This camel case thing, that's when I upgraded ESLint. I think we're not going to do some of that stuff, like the basic tooling stuff. That'll save us some time. So let's not worry about ignoring that rule, because we're not going to upgrade ESLint this time. This is another, well, this is again when I upgraded ESLint. I think again, yeah, we were not going to upgrade ESLint this episode. Maybe we won't even do any package upgrades this episode. Because I just do those every episode. This was another change that came from the package upgrades for ESLint, the ESLint unicorn rules. It didn't like me returning all my promises directly that I'm not using, because I have a reject and a resolve here, but because of the way I was writing my arrow function, it also was returning this, even though reject and resolve are what mattered. So I actually agree that it's better this way, so I did a bunch of changes, but they're not really worth looking into too much. This was a cool change. This one I want to get to. Contain strict. Contain CSS containment. Contain strict. Where is this here? I'm not 100. I haven't done any performance metrics on this, but this was just some interesting setting that I saw. So the contain property allows an author to indicate that an element and its contents are, as much as possible, independent of the rest of the document tree. This allows the browser to recalculate layout, style, paint, size, or whatever on that limited area of the DOM, leading to obvious performance benefits. So that sounds good. So the basic idea was that there's these different rules you can set, strict being one of the stricter ones. Actually, with strict, there's also an additional one called style. But I found when I added style that Firefox acted a little weird with that one. So I'm just going to stick with strict, which is size, layout, and paint. It's like a shorthand for 3 of these rules, not style. But style is very minimal anyways. So it hasn't, I don't think it, did it add any bugs? I don't think so. I think I made it so that it didn't add bugs. Because you can, if you go too strict, it actually can get a bit weird. So if you see here, if we'll look through, I think I've go strict, strict. See, this one's just layout. This one's size and layout. So I used it in 8 places. I wonder if I have that commit already written down. That would be nice. Let's see. Contain styling when it makes sense. Let's take a peek at this commit exactly and see if it has those 8 changes I made. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, great. Let's just use this patch, because this was a very isolated change that I thought was kind of neat. So again, we're not going to notice any performance benefits, but if you look, I mean, in theory we will, but my app's not exactly slow, to be honest, so I haven't noticed it. But basically what I did is I went into places where I felt that the DOM tree would never be, it didn't matter about the outside world. Examples of that are in any of the windows or any of the windowless apps. So let's say WebAmp. I basically tell the CSS, anything inside the WebAmp and its containers and whatever, let that handle its own thing, because it's not going to be affected by the desktop. Same here with the desktop itself. I've also made it a separate container. This one might have been unnecessary, I'm not sure. I don't think it hurts to add it, but I think it can hurt. There's a limit to how many of those you should do. The file managers, I've contained the right-click menus, the start menu, and the taskbar. Like I said, the windows, and the container components. So there's several layers of containment that I've tried to add to try to hopefully have some kind of balance between this fabled performance benefit that they suggest is possible and just not having too many. And I also tried to make it where they make sense, where it's like this box does not affect this outside box, basically. And in those scenarios, I felt it was reasonable to use this contain rule. So if we look at it here, I've applied the patch. Ideally, we don't notice any differences at all. Yeah, there's no visible differences, so not much to discuss with it. But we can make a note of it here. So I already had made this note here, but for the system and refactors, contain styling when it makes sense. Yes. For whatever that may or may not have done. Got one done. Now we can minimize all these places where it was being used and was separate. There's just less stuff for us to worry about in our quest to try to apply all these changes. Here was another one. I can't minimize this one yet. I need that. Right, that was size and layout. So in the cases where I use size and layout, there were some times where position couldn't be done. Like I think if for right-click menus, if there was no position, it had trouble knowing its width that it needed to be. So that was one where it couldn't be strict in that case. And there was 1 or 2 other cases like that. There we go. So we got all the ones we can deal with. Let's go back to the top here. We'll keep the ESLint rules in case we need them. What did I do to the browser here? Let's see what I did. I think these changes were fun enough and somewhat isolated. So let's take a peek. Let's just call these browser upgrades and let's just apply them all at once here. Just as one big browser dump, and let's see the differences. Oh, where is my browser? Browser, here it is. So I just applied the changes, and now I'm going to look at the diff to get an idea for what actually changed. Right, I need this isValidURL command now. Let's also take that. So we got the browser. Where's this isValid command? There it is. And I put that right up below that offset. Time zone offset. Here, no, that's not it. Where is that darn thing? There it is. So isValidURL is very simple. You find it on Stack Overflow for the most part, I think. Although I might have tweaked the wording slightly. You put a URL in, and I do a try catch here. So return if the type of a new URL equals object, so it parsed it perfectly fine, then true. Otherwise, if for some reason it is undefined, null, whatever else, that would also be false. But in almost every scenario where this wouldn't be an object, it's going to cause an error. And in that case, I just return false. So that's how I check if it's a valid URL. And the reason I'm doing that is because one of the improvements I've added is for the ability for us to load files from the browser in the files from the OS in the browser if they're like HTML. So again, ignoring the imports, let's look at what changed here, the substantive changes. So one cool thing is I've added the ability to load icons. I realized that we can just assume that the favicon icon is where you'd expect it to be. And whenever anyone puts a URL in, I go to look to see if there's an image of an icon there. And if so, I update my icon. I've also added this thing called source doc. That's part of an iframe where you can dump HTML in and have the iframe be HTML kind of. So that was another kind of neat thing. And that's where I've added support for HTML. Actually, on that note, we need to add, that's one other little piece we need to add. .html, here we go, to the extensions. So for .html files, I now allow those to be open in the browser. Is in extensions. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. So H is first. So browser, or it can be opened in Monaco as well. And we'll test that behavior in a moment. It's complaining about isValidURL, but it's wrong. Let's close it and open it again, and that'll shut it up. Indeed it did. Didn't it? Yeah. Okay. So what have we changed here from how it was before? Before it was very cut down. Actually, not much changed here in the iframe, other than the fact, like I said, we can also pass in that source doc. And if there's no source doc, it's just undefined. There's no it doesn't remember the previous one. I've also changed the styling here for the background. Because when it is HTML, it takes the background color from whatever the inherited one is, and that was nothing. So it was transparently going to the Windows background color, the color of the window, which is not what I wanted. But I noticed with Chrome, its default is white for like a page where it loads HTML. So I just set white here. So that's all that changed there. And then it was basically just this set URL command. I've made it more complex. So with set URL now, you can, instead of calling it a new URL, I call it input data. And you can pass in HTML basically into the URL. Wait, does that make sense? Input data. I don't like that name. It's not data. It is a URL. I should say input path or something like that, or path. Yeah, let's just say input path and change that because it's very wrong to call it input data. It's not, I wouldn't call it data. It's not like data in that way where it's like, oh, I've got the data. Like, no, you just got an address to some data. Okay, so yeah, it's not a new URL necessarily, but it is an input path. And then before, all that I was doing was just directly replacing it with whatever it gave me. But now I do a little more logic. I say, is it HTML? I check the input path's extension name. If it's HTML and the file exists, then yeah, it's HTML. We set loading. We were doing that before. But then we set source doc. So if it's HTML, we're going to read that HTML from the file. Otherwise, this is just going to be blank. And blank, it gets considered as undefined here. So it won't even render that. It won't render that attribute. Then I also try to set the icon. Now every load, I set the default icon back to the browser icon, because then I also try to load the favicon after the fact. So if it's not HTML, right? If it is HTML, the source doc thing happens. The icon's just the generic one. The end. If it's not HTML, so if it's a URL, it checks if it's valid. And oh, right, this is another piece I added, the ability to do search. So if it's not considered a valid URL, then it's going to try to search. And for that, I just use this Google URL here where I have the query path be the input path. I guess that's where it gets confusing about the data. Maybe I'll just call this address because it is an address bar. So maybe it's not unreasonable to call it address. But then here in query, it sounds silly. Maybe address input? I want the name to make sense. Address input. Let's say that. And let's not think about it anymore. As it is, I'm making the name too long. It's going to end up wrapping something else. Okay. Didn't mess with formatting too much, luckily. So back to the point here. If it's a valid URL, it replaces it with the URL. Otherwise, it replaces it with a search URL and uses the URL content that you provided as the query. And if it was a valid URL, that's when it tries to do the favicon. So it makes a new image called element favicon here. And then the favicon URL is my assumed URL. So I just take the address input, which we know is a valid URL because we've already checked it. We get the origin piece from it here, which is the base path. And then we just add the favicon ICO part to it. And this is just a standard thing where we expect there to be a favicon.ico file in everybody's root directory, basically. And then what we do is we add a load listener that if it loads successfully to set the icon to that URL that we found. And then we set the source to get it in motion. So that's it. So the browser improvements are the ability to load HTML, the ability to search via the address bar, and icons. So let's take a look at those and see if they worked. So open up the browser, and we already got a broken image, so that's a good start. What happened? Oh, there's another piece to this puzzle then, right? So the image is being sent incorrectly because we need to do a slight upgrade to the way images work. And that is in the icon file. Hopefully we can find without too much fighting. Here we go. So what are the differences here? Right, there's several changes here, but we're only going to focus on the one that's relevant at the moment. There's some involving size that we're going to get to later, but the one that's relevant here is that we want it to trust the source. Because in this scenario here, we assume it's a local source and we add our special image size path to get the right, either a 16 by 16 icon or a 48 by 48. But in the case where there's no source, or if it's a blob, so it's like a buffer URL, I was just loading the source directly. I also now want for proper URLs to do the same thing. So I'm just going to base it on protocol here and say if it's an HTTP protocol or HTTPS. So I think that's not too unreasonable, and that is the only change necessary for the issue I was having. So let's jump to that piece here, which I think we can find somewhat easily enough by searching for this blob. Here we go. Was this it? No, this isn't it. It's in icon. Here it is. Yes. So we just have to add these two additional possibilities. So if it starts with blob or HTTP or HTTPS, then hey, just load it. Let's try that again. So we open the browser and there we go. So now we see a little Google icon. And if I switch to something like, let's say test.com, oh, right. So this is another issue that I haven't dealt with yet, but test.com is a valid URL theoretically, but if I don't have the protocol here, it just isn't trusting it. But if I add that, it's going to try to do something. It didn't do very well at it though. Let me add more stuff. Okay, it hates that for some reason. Why is that? Sometimes the browser, when you're messing with iframes, you don't necessarily know what you're going to get. Let's try this again. Okay, so it has a problem with test.com. Basically didn't load it, but it didn't fail, which is not the nicest thing. What if I try meow.com? Oh, there we go. So test.com eventually timed out. Got a pretty long timeout. Let's add that to our next stream. We need some kind of faster timeout. Faster timeout for browser attempt. Yeah, I think for my fake browser, it needs to fail faster because there's so little I can know about the internals of it that I can't leave it up to the user to assume that something's happening. Let's try a different website. Maybe this one will work. Meow.com doesn't work either. That's just the problem with these iframes. There's only so many websites you can safely go to. that'll let you slip through with the CORS issues. What if we try HTTPS? Could that be the solution? No. Fails faster anyways. There's some domains that work. Let me try to think of one that works. What about Nintendo.com? I don't know why that would... I don't even know why that came to my mind. I know Dustin Brett works. I'm not sure why I have that open, but anyways, you see the icon loaded. I can't change the title bar, unfortunately. I guess I could change it to the address, but I don't know. I'd rather change it to the title, but I can't know the title because it's inside the iframe. Anyways, it mostly worked. We saw search works. Let's say I type cookie. That searched for cookie, so that works. The icon switched back to the generic icon. If I go to google.com, it doesn't work at all. Oh, right, because it's a special URL. Well, when I load the... Oh, wow, and then that crashed too. That's nice. So the browser's got some issues anyways. Luckily, that's on the browser's side, but I don't 100% know how that happened or why. Let's see if it happens again if we open the browser and then close it. Open, close. Okay, now it's fine. Got a message here from Lightbook. Why does some websites work and some don't? Well, the main issue is this thing called CORS, this cross-site access. In the case of Google here, if you add this IGU equals 1, that allows you to embed it on your site, and it gets past these CORS issues. Like you see there's one here, refuse to frame a part of the URL that it tried to load because of an ancestor violates the content security policy. That's one of these type of CORS issues. Another one, let me show you here. So we'll go to test.com. And there's not a lot of easy ways around this. One way that I could get around it is by setting up a CORS proxy, where when you type in an address, secretly, I'm actually typing address, query string, and then the address. So I'm requesting that page from another page, and then that page bypasses CORS by requesting it on the back end side. Test.com is slow. Here we go. So it eventually just completely failed. I'm not even sure test.com is a real site. Let's just do a real site that'll really legit fail on me. Hacker News is a good one. hackernews.com. The image might load, actually. Yeah, so the icon you see loaded for Hacker News because that gets past the CORS issues. But if you look here, it says refuse to display ycombinator.com in a frame because it's X-frame options to deny. So long story short, most of these websites set up things so that you can't put their websites on your website, kind of, unless you go through certain hoops like the IGU equals 1 for Google's case, which changes the way that they respond with their HTTP headers. So it has to do with HTTP headers and just the way iframes work. But yeah, there's not an easy way around it, unfortunately. One other piece I forgot to demo was the HTML. So this is like partially HTML. If we look at this, it's not a proper HTML document. It's from my WYSIWYG editor where it shows these little WYSIWYG HTML markup files. But what we can do is we can rename it from WHTML to .html. And you can see here it gets the icon for the browser. And if I double click it, there we go. So it can properly load full-on HTML. And I have full access to this frame and can do whatever in it because this frame is just purely, oh, yeah, it doesn't even consider it a real frame. I can't even view its source. But this is just a dump of the HTML. And you can see in the address bar, it's actually an HTML address. So that's kind of a cool thing I can do. Like if I put this on the desktop and I rename it to like cookie, let's say, and then let's see if we can access it from here. So desktop /cookie.html. I mean, did it work? I don't know. Let's try another one. Cookies. Yeah, there we go. So cookies does a search. This file didn't exist. But if I go cookie, yeah, so it knows that this exists here. And I could actually, wait, can I edit it? I don't have any good ways to edit it because I actually don't have a method of saving right now with Monaco Editor at the moment. If I could, I can delete this stuff, but I don't have a save button in Monaco Editor. So that's one thing I still have to do. Anyways, the browser works. Now the browser can read, oh, again, it crashed. Is that related to the HTML thing, I wonder? I wonder if it's when I read HTML and then I close it. Oh, okay. All right, well, that's a bug to fix another day, but that seems simple enough. So let's say here, browser crashes on close if HTML was loaded. Simple enough to fix, I think. Got an okay from Lightbook here. Yeah, it's a weird little thing it's one of the reasons why I wasn't so excited about like, oh, I'm gonna have a browser in my OS because I know there's so many limitations with iframes. At the same time, what I'm thinking about doing is I'm going to have a whitelist of pages that I know allow the course to work, such as my website or the Google IGU thing. And when in the browser in the background, when you go to those pages, I'll let those just straight up load fully, like how right from directly in the URL. But anything not on the whitelist, I might run through a course proxy, where when you type in google.com, you're actually getting like courseproxy.com/q equals google.com kind of thing. And then the course proxy website is what you actually see. But that's one way around it. There's some other ideas I have. But you just can't have a, I mean, what's the point even, honestly? Like, it is a cool idea as an app, but like the idea of a browser in a browser is kind of silly. Unless my browser can in some way be better, but it really, really can't because of the limitations of what the iframe can do. So, and just in general, how would a browser inside a browser be better than the browser that it's inside? It's a good question anyways, but that's why I think people should temper their hopes for what this browser can be. That being said, I think we've applied all the changes. The icon thing worked good. The HTML thing worked good, except for the crashing on close. What was the other one? The search worked good for the most part. I think one thing that didn't work ideal with the search is that the URL here didn't load the Google icon. Maybe what I could do here is I should change valid URL. If it's a valid URL, yeah, maybe I should do that. And then there will be a valid URL no matter what. I'm thinking of using this as the valid URL, as the URL. So what I'll say is like wait, do I have something called URL? No, I don't. I'll say URL equals, if it's a valid URL, use the address input. Otherwise, use this. Like so. And then Prettier will do my formatting for me. I'm not going to mess with the formatting right now. So then that'll just be a straight up switch locations here. Actually, this wouldn't need to exist then because this will always be valid. So the favicon thing can just happen right after. I wonder if the favicon should happen before it loads. No, that doesn't make sense. So we get a URL. If it's valid, we use that URL. Wait, here, was it shadowed? Oh, it already is being used somewhere else. Right, okay. So we'll just say the address URL. And oh, we don't even use it here? Right. We don't use it? We just trust the address input here, right? Okay, that's fair enough. So yeah, now we always have a favicon. So the change that I did there is when I search, it should use this as the valid address then, and then it'll load the favicon based on that. So let's take a peek then. So now if I do a search, it should change the icon. Let me change the icon to my other thing first. HTTPS. So go to my website. I'd like to get the schema autofill. So here's my website and the icon changed. Now if I just do a search, meow, failed to construct URL. Oh, because address input is incorrect. Right. So address input should actually be based on address URL. That was one mistake I made. But that was the last mistake, Mr. Bond. Okay, it did actually search there, but let's just test this one more time. Again, we'll switch to justinbrett.com. Oops, favicon changed. And now if we just do a test search, nice, it changed to the Google icon when I did a search. And yeah, wait, it crashed. That was a non-HTML thing. So just in general, the browser is crashing on close. Just say that browser crashes on close. Should be easy to fix, but I won't waste your guys' time with that one. That'll be next episode. You'll see how right as I fixed it. I'll sneak it in, perhaps. Got a message here again from Lightbook. I think your browser inside browser provides an extra layer of sandboxing, so more security. Yeah, I guess that is true in a way. It is like an extreme incognito of sorts. But yeah, you lose so much functionality. Hey, hopefully I'm back. I'm just going to wait a second to see myself on the screen, but I had a little crash, as this tends to happen, it seems, from time to time, unfortunately. I'm still seeing a loading here. Okay, cool. I think I'm back. So yeah, I was just trying to address a comment here in regards to that. Oh, I got to reset my videos here now on my stream. Darn it. Set that back to that. Get my VS Code back to this one here. Got Lightbook back. Cool, he's back. So yeah, the extra layer. So here I was going to show you even a layer further. So what I could do here is I could open up Calibri, which is an actual operating system that somebody makes or a group of people make. I think I don't even know if it's Unix based. I'm not sure, to be honest. But I have an x86 emulator, and the x86 emulator has network support that does use a proxy, a WebSockets proxy. So you see here it says you are now connected to the internet. So now I'm actually in another operating system, and then I think this one has a browser somewhere. Doesn't it? Well, I don't know if it has a browser. This one. I mean, you can also do the damn small Linux. DSL Linux is another one. But because we have internet, one thing you could do, I guess, network. Here we go. Client. Don't I have a browser? Is Synergy a browser? Sounds like a text-based browser I have. Okay, let's try text-based browser. So here we go. So this is as sandboxed as it gets, I think. Let's see if this works. www.google.com. Then a text-based browser via WebSockets proxy running a version of Calibri operating system in an x86 emulator on a web desktop. And it's an extremely slow connection too. Hopefully it's working. There. Oh, what happened there? Some visual change occurred. I mean, one unfortunate thing with this WebSocket proxy is it's extremely slow. It's also not mine. We can see some activity perhaps. Let's go to the network here and see if we can find it. Here it is, relay.widgettree.org, switching protocol. Here's the messages. Yeah, there actually is data flying by, but it's extremely slow. There's like a green packet there. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Fennell's 216th birthday, Fanny Hensel. So this is the text version of Google running inside that browser via the WebSocket proxy in the operating system on the x86 emulator. That's kind of a fun little wackiness one. Anyways, let's talk it a bit no further. So I've made a note about the crashing browser. I'm going to commit this as browser improvements. Actually, no, let's be more specific. Browser search, icon, and what was the third one? And HTML support. Yeah, that's true. That's all the things. That was actually a very nice summary. Browser search, icon, and HTML support. I could have said favicon, I guess. Too late. Too late. Too late. So that is only my third commit of the episode, and we've done 2 hours. Oh my. We are not going to get through much this episode, unfortunately. Well, like I said, I can carry some of it forward. I got about another hour left in me, and I got about this much Red Bull, so let's see where we can get. Let's go back to the top of this list now and just keep looking at file changes and see which ones are worth pulling in. All right. So there's some status bar changes. I think what's going to happen, I'm going to try to find a few big changes, but I'm not going to do, there's so many little minutia changes that I want to apply, but we're going to have to do it at a later date. Here is a close with transition. We already did that. It'll be a next episode thing. Next episode on Dustin. Here's a simple one for the photo app. Basically, this is just something I wanted to do before, which is disable the buttons when there's no photo. Pretty simple, conceptually speaking. Actually, pretty simple in code, too, if you've already got the code. And the goal is just, if there's no URL, don't allow you to click the buttons. So that's all I really did here. Is the file system persistent? Yes, it is, actually. I'm not sure about the Calibri one. Oh, no, even that one is. What am I talking about? This is all stuff I've done. So not only is it persistent, but the state is persistent. So if we open up Calibri again. Oh, wait, what happened there? Did it not remember it? Oh, because I restarted before. Watch, let me open Calibri again. One thing is you have to close the emulator for it to save its state. But if you close the emulator and don't just close the page or go off of it, then it will remember it. And yes, the browser desktop also is persistent. It's stored inside the IndexedDB database it makes. So you see here, we got it running, Calibri. So if I close this here, it actually makes a snapshot of that image. And you can see it here in snapshots. So it made the Calibri snapshot. Now, let's say I refresh the page. So there's that persistence you're talking about. I refresh, I come back another day. I open up Calibri again. Boom, I'm right back where I started. Because it remembers that state. And now I'm literally right back into it where I could just start running stuff. And I don't have to go through that loading process even. And that's the same for the JS-DOS emulator as well. So let's say I start playing Doom or something. Oh, I can't play in Nightmare mode on the shareware version. Or Inferno mode. Oh yeah, there's a Nightmare mode. I can't play on that. So let's say I start here, and then I go, okay, I'm done for today. I save it. My save is whatever, TWE. And then I just close Doom here. Now, it doesn't save states with JS-DOS, but it saves whatever you saved. So I went into Doom and pressed save in this case, versus the x86 emulator where it actually saves the state of the emulator. This just saves the files. So now if I go back in, I go to load, it's right there. And I can just load it, and then I'm right back in my Doom level where I started. So yeah, you have complete persistence that way. We also have drag and drop, so I can just take, like, let's say that git patch I did earlier, I just drag that onto the desktop and drop it there. And there it is, right from my desktop to the other one. And then I can go right into accessing it and seeing that git commit. And if I refresh and come back another day, it's right there. I can open up the window here and drag it in and put it in there if you want to save it there instead. And again, I can come back the next day. Thanks. I got a that's cool. I really like it from Lightbook. So nice. Got the approval. Yeah, so there's so many things even today that I did that I wanted to get into, but let's just keep moving. So the photo app, I'm not even going to demo this one. It's so simple. I just added to this disabled state. If there's no URL or it's whatever, same with here, no URL. So disable buttons when they're, oh wait, in photo app, disable buttons with when no URL, let's say. Done. Little minor refactorage there. What's next on our list? So that was a simple one that I just happened to see. Oh, is this pan zoom part of it? Yes, I think it is. This was another little issue. Is that the zooming effect, if you open up the photo app, you could zoom if there was no URL. So disable it if there's no URL and allow pan zooming if there is a URL. So that's another little piece that I probably could have added another commit had I actually looked, but I did not. Only allow zooming if there is a URL. Duh. Pretty obvious, but nothing's obvious to the computer, which is always it's like a fun part of programming, is that you have to, that's like if you were to say to that a computer is like explaining to a child, that would be insulting the child extremely, because a computer is much stupider than that. It basically doesn't understand anything unless you're explicit about every single character. You know, not just the meaning, but it can't even really it can only get meaning from what it can parse, basically. So what did I change here? Why do I have playlist window here? I just like made up a constant. I guess there must be something I'm doing in WebAmp. So I did some kind of WebAmp improvements. We're not going to go through those today. I don't think. What was the one I did? Oh yeah, I just added drag and drop support. We'll do that next week. This metadata one's simple enough. I suppose I could add it. As I was saying, now I'm using the name datalOS instead of the X name that I was using for the longest time. So I've also just added this alias field here, that if there's an alias that use that as the title. So now you'll see here, instead of an X in my tab, it's going to say dataless. Nice. Now it says dataless. That was a minor one. We'll call that use alias as title. Just like that. Save it there, save it here. It's hard to remember all the places, all the buttons you got to click. So many buttons. I was thinking about getting one of those stream decks, but I don't know if that's necessarily something I need. So I made this home constant already. We made that in the terminal episode part. But I think this is another thing next episode. I'll just do all these changes. There's a few places where I can use the constant, and I was, but too tedious. We'll get to that later. Too tedious. What's next? This is another ESLint refactor. I don't know what the heck this is. Oh, I think this is just that tabbing thing. It's hard to tell with the way that this diff has decided to be formatted. Let's actually take a little peek at it just for the heck of it. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll copy part of the code in one side, and then I'll copy the other part into another tab, and then I'll just go up here, click the two, and say compare. And then I can get a better look at it. Okay, so there was actually one little difference. Right, I remember this change. So that part we did get rid of the ESLint rule. The part that I haven't done yet is this, these sub icons. I don't know if I want to get into that one today. I think that's another thing we'll save for next episode, and I'll put that one in. Basically, the idea there, let's say for the video icon, after you get the video thumbnail of a picture, the little VLC cone icon would disappear. But in Windows, it actually becomes a little tiny icon in the corner. So I've added that little effect where it goes to be a tiny icon. But I'm not going to do that today, so let's ignore that piece as well. None of these changes are going to be lost, and none of the people watching the streams are going to miss them. It's just that some of these commits I'm going to move to the next episode because I've just got a deluge of commits, if that's the correct word for it. Probably not. I probably made that up. This was fixing a little spacing issue. I need to clean up my commits because there's too many things out of place where I can't describe properly to everybody what are these little things that are left that I did. And hopefully I'll be more busy next week. I'm hoping. I've kept saying for the last couple episodes that I'm hoping to have some news for the viewers in the future. But we're not there yet, so hopefully next stream I'll have something for everybody, but who knows. What was this change here? This change was for focusing stuff. This is another one where I'm going to need a commit message because I can't completely remember pieces of it. But the idea was that it wasn't quite focusing right. Where if I clicked something was it the first time or the second time? There's some issue with keeping track of what's focused. And I was working on it here, but to try to describe it any further would suggest that I can remember this change, and I barely can. I need to isolate it out into a cleaner commit for next episode. Same with whatever the heck it is I did here. Spotlight effect. This is the one I wanted to get into. You know, I think I could probably do that as an isolated commit. I think I probably have it in here. Let me see, because that would be a fun one to discuss next. It's a bit out of place. Did I not? Oh, right. See, I have so many commits, I have to press load more commits to see them all. Okay, cool. I've only did two little things with Spotlight. A color tweak and the main commit itself. Oh, I have a feeling it's not going to allow me to apply this patch verbatim because other things around it will have changed. Where are we on time? This Spotlight one is a good one. I think we should do it. Let's do it. Yeah, it's not too complicated, this change. So the basic idea of the Spotlight effect is when you hover over taskbar entry or start menu entries here, the cursor causes a little effect to occur on the items. And that's how it is in Windows 10, and that's what I want to replicate basically. So let's just do it. I wonder if we can apply the patch. I want to apply the patch, but I know it's going to fail on the file entry here. Let's just try it for this piece here. I'm going to just copy the sidebar button has been completely changed. Let's start there. Sidebar button. Where are you? Here you are. Ah, it's actually up there. Oh, yeah. Oh, was this the sidebar group? Is that what changed? Oh, this was the sidebar component that changed. It used to just be the sidebar button. Oh, okay. All right. That's simple enough. Sorry, I was looking at the other window there. I didn't realize. Where is that sidebar component? Darn it. Ah, it's its own separate component. So it was just this, and now it's that? Yes. And then we don't need this. Oh, we're not keeping track of collapsed anymore? See, that's where we get into this was another episode, because I don't even have a mention of keeping track of collapsed. Yeah, that's another episode. See, that's why we need to do these commits in the right order. I don't think we're going to get to the Spotlight effect. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to show you where I got it from so we can take a peek at what it looks like. In my visual effects bookmarks. Here it is. So this guy wrote up a little article on it, and he has a good example. So you can see it here, this little spotlight effect that's happening. That happens on the start menu icons. And it's actually really simple, the code that he wrote. It's just like a simple radial gradient that gets applied to the background and to the border image. And if we look at the magic of it, it's like not much is happening here. Really, all that I cared about was this. I almost wonder if all this other stuff can just go away. No, I think I needed the ref, and then it just became a rabbit hole of needing other little stuff. But I turned it in so that it would be just a one-liner here, and then the actual effect just applies a few... What does it apply here? Right, you give it the element, and you got on mouse leave and on mouse move. So when the mouse leaves the element, it removes the style, and when it goes over the element, it gets its positioning based on where the cursor is, and it just applies a background image and a border image. That's just a radial gradient with that position of the mouse plus the position of the element. So it's not so crazy for the fact that it makes a cool effect. And yeah, we'll apply that next episode because there's changes that have happened to this file that aren't reflected here, and it happened in previous commits. Yeah, I knew this episode was going to be tough because I had 80 commits, and it's just too many. I'm happy we got to the terminal. I'm happy we did that first, because I don't know how many more of these I got in me today. Come on, Red Bull, save me. Give me wings. Let's see if we can find any other cool wins, but I think I'm running low on energy already. There's so many changes I did this episode. I can't believe it. I'm a little surprised to remember how many... Look at this. Okay, a lot of these are useless. A lot of these are me upgrading Monaco. So I think they're making it look like I did more changes than I actually did. We actually got through quite a bit, but I need to isolate out some of these if I'm going to be able to discuss them with you guys properly and not have them be just a confusing mess. Yeah, luckily most of this Monaco stuff was completely just... Yeah, there's a lot of upgrades here that I did that are... nothing to do with anything relevant. You know, I think we're going to have to call it today. What did we do? Let's just double check what we did today. We did the terminal. We did some styling tweaks. We did some upgrades to the browser. We did a lot of discussing stuff, which I'm happy about. That's almost better for these streams, is to be able to have some discussions. But yeah, picking apart some of these little changes and trying to figure out what these are. I think next episode I'm going to go back to the format of taking a commit patch, applying it, looking at the diff, discussing all the changes. Because trying to pick them out here, line by line, and going, oh, for this, I needed that. It's a mess. It was a mess when I used to do it 20 episodes ago. It's a mess today. And it's even more so a mess because I had so many commits. 80 commits, 2,500 editions, 197 files. Too much. So... I think with that, thank you guys for sticking with me for the 2 hours for my usual stream freeze that happens, unfortunately, with OBS. There's going to be some cool features next episode. There's a lot of refactors, a lot of bug fixes, but the spotlight effect is one of the nice ones. I have a few nice little drag effects that just add that extra little touch. But in general, the terminal was a big one, and next episode, I'm hoping to have some more commands for the terminal that I can show you as well. If you like this episode, please throw me a like. If you want to motivate me, you want to keep track of what I'm doing, you want to keep track of these videos, please subscribe. Other than that, thank you for tuning in. Leave a comment if you have any comments or anything you want to say. And see you in the next one next week. So, goodbye.